Hey, welcome back to the Group Project Podcast. This is episode number 85, and we have dug into the post-secondary ranks here and reached out to a gentleman by the name of Dr. David DeJong.
DeJong, yep.
Okay, it's DeJong, and I'm never quite sure how you pronounce that J, but Dr. DeJong is the associate professor, and he is also he's an associate professor, and he's also the educational leadership chair. I hope I said division of the educational leadership chair at the University of South Dakota. So, Dr. DeJong, welcome, man. Great to have you on the show.
Yeah, I'm happy to be here. Thanks for writing a great book. I was a part of being able to read that as well and being on this podcast. I'm happy to be here. Thank you.
Awesome. Yes, you're right. Hey, full transparency here. Dr. DeJong helped peer edit my book, Learning Curve. And actually, Dr. DeJong's in his role as an associate professor has actually authored. I looked at kind of was creeping on some of his profile pages, his university page, and he's written a lot of publications, a lot of stuff, very well versed, doing some awesome things. So let me get this straight. South Dakota is located in Vermillion, South Dakota. Is that correct?
Yep. University of South Dakota. It's in Vermillion. I live in Sioux Falls, South Dakota, which is about an hour away, and work remotely for part of the week and part of the week on campus. It's a great mixture.
Okay, so maybe orient us when you say, because we have a lot of Midwest listeners, but we don't know South Dakota that well. So maybe orient us. Where do you live? Where's Vermillion at? And kind of just give us that perspective.
Yeah, so Vermillion is close to where Iowa, South Dakota, and Nebraska all meet. And it's on the far east side of the state. And Sioux Falls is as well. So I grew up in Northwest Iowa. And so on the weekends, we would oftentimes go to Sioux Falls because we were, an hour from Sioux Falls, an hour from Sioux City, hour from Okoboji.
Okay.
So it's kind of home, you might say,
awesome.
Where I grew up.
Awesome. So so we're going to dig into this a little bit, Dr. D. You actually started off, like many of our guests, in K through 12. You were a teacher, you were an administrator, you served in a superintendent role. Maybe take us through your your leadership experience. And then I'm really curious how you made that jump to your current position.
Yeah, thanks. So I grew up in Iowa, and I graduated from a class of like 46 people. So kind of a rural agricultural community where sports were a big deal, and had a great high school experience. In the middle of my high school experience, one of my best friends was killed in a car accident, and it was a really rough time for me. And teachers and coaches kind of helped me through that period of time. And it was in that moment that even though I didn't love school at that time, I was like, if they can help me as much as they did, I'm going to become a teacher and a coach. So I went to the University of Northern Iowa. I got my degree, had a great experience. And then I was a teacher in Pella, Iowa, Pella Community Schools, 3rd grade and then 4th grade. And then I got my first principal/superintendent job at Pella Christian right after that. So
wait, okay. So you taught for how many years, and then you got this principal/superintendent role?
Yeah, it was just 3, right?
Wow.
So I got my master's degree at Drake in that time. And
holy cow.
I was only 25, but what I learned is that your age in leadership matters right away. But as soon as people find out that you are there to serve them and to remove obstacles and to help them, like genuinely help them and genuinely serve them, your age just disappears. It literally melted away for me. Good stuff. And I learned a lot in those 8 years leading at Pella Christian. So when I was a teacher at Pella Community, I felt like I was influencing and inspiring by addition, right? I could just serve 24 little kiddos in my classroom, and I thought that was great. And then I was like, I wonder what would happen if I can inspire and influence by multiplication. So I was like, well, school leadership fits that. So then I landed a job at Pella Christian. And then when I was at Pella Christian for 8 years, I was like, I wonder, like, can I inspire and influence by like exponentially? Like, what's next?
Mm-hmm.
And I thought, well, I wonder if a professor of educational leadership would do that. And now I'm in my 7th year at the University of South Dakota. And I honestly feel like being a professor in a role like this, I can inspire and influence exponentially. It's awesome. I absolutely love what I do right now.
I like that. I haven't heard it in those terms before, but it makes sense to me. I wrote that down, inspiring exponentially, because you have a chance to form or to impact all these school leaders.
Yep.
And then those guys in turn can impact the students, and you're nodding your head yes there. Maybe talk about, I'm curious, what programs does South Dakota offer in terms of educational leadership, and maybe what sets your program apart from other educational leadership programs that are out there?
Yeah, great question. So before I came to USD, all of the principal, curriculum director, special education director, superintendent, and adult and higher education programs were all online. And when I started, I'm like, wow, like I kind of miss the human component of this. Is there a way that we can get people, how can we still make those connections with people? Well, since USD was an early adopter of the online program, they already have a lot of cool things in place, a lot of opportunities for people to connect to campus and still make those connections. So I think, as I look back at the history even further, if you're in rural South Dakota and you have to come to like Wednesday night meetings, or if you have to come to weekend meetings, that can be a real barrier for rural South Dakota, school leaders on a reservation in South Dakota. So we really think of ourselves as serving the state and the region. So we kind of know who we are and we know where we're going, which then makes things pretty exciting.
So talk about, like, you have the principalship program. Like, do you have a superintendent's program? I guess if somebody's listening and they're like, "Hey, I'm in the tri-state area. And we've interviewed a lot of people actually in Western Iowa and Nebraska. So we've got quite a few listeners over there. What different programs do you guys offer?"
Yep. So through our online programs, you can become a principal, a curriculum director, a special education director, a superintendent, and or adult and higher education, which most people want to get into, like student affairs or become a professor, work at a university. And our degrees are master's, specialist, and doctorate. Now, the one thing that's unique about our doctorate program is we it's mostly hybrid, where you come for mostly online classes, but then for each class, you come for 4 Saturdays per class.
Okay. Okay.
We serve dozens of people from Iowa and Nebraska.
So I was going to ask you, you're in a unique location. When they graduate from your program, how easy is it for them to get the certification for their state, the state that they live in? Is that a piece of cake, or is there some hurdles to cross there?
Nope, it's a piece of cake. We have good relationships with the Board of Educational Examiners in Iowa and Nebraska, and the school leaders that live in Iowa that get their degree with us, they first get like their principal degree or license in South Dakota, and then they work with the Iowa Board of Educational Examiners if they live in Iowa. So they just need to take like the Iowa specific classes,
Okay.
like human relations and.
Sure. Yep. Gotcha. So
And then if you're in Iowa and coming to South Dakota, like you have to take a Native American Studies class because that's specific in our state.
Interesting. Okay.
Yeah.
So knowing you, I know you always like to be on the cutting edge. You're always trying to find, what do our students really need to be successful in their positions? I'm always curious, maybe looking back from 7 years ago to now, you've been there for 7 years. Maybe what are some topics or some school leadership topics that are maybe new that you're infusing into your programs that you didn't do when you started?
Yeah. So maybe two topics I want to talk about. First is school sims, so simulations for school leaders. And the second topic is telepresence robots. So we use those both a lot at USD. So first with school sims,
Yeah.
um, what those are is they're like those choose your own adventure books that you may have read as a kid, but they're video based. So you see a video and then there's four preloaded questions usually, or four preloaded options of what you can say to a person. And then based on your choice, it leads to a different video. And then, you watch that video and then you have to make another decision and that leads to another video. So you can't ever go backwards in the simulation. You can only go forwards. And what I do is I create those safe spaces for aspiring leaders or current leaders to talk about, why did you just make the decision that you make? And it really gets people talking about their past experiences. They talk about like their value systems. They talk about their opinions, something that they've read. And it really gets leaders talking about what leaders need to talk about. They're awesome. So I fly all over the country, either facilitating them or I train people all over the country on how to use them in their programs or in their school districts.
So what would be like an example of this is really fascinating. I've heard of this. I've never used these school sims before. What would be an example of a scenario that you would have an aspiring school leader go through?
Yeah. So one is called the disruptive teacher. And it begins with a 3 minutes of context saying that you're a principal. You have a lot of good things going, but you have kind of a troubled teacher on your staff. And then you see a video of a teacher that shuts the door, sits across from you and says, I didn't mean to dump this on you, but you have to know that this teacher isn't very nice to me. She's not nice to the kids or the other teachers. And I don't want you to do anything about it. I just want you to know.
Classic.
And then right there.
Classic.
Yeah, isn't that classic? You're like, oh, I've heard that before.
Yeah.
Experience leader. And then you have to decide to listen to her fully, or you have to decide what to say. And I make people commit to their responses, and then we choose the response that has the most votes, and we go to the next video. And it makes people laugh. It really creates spaces for leaders to talk about the depth of the decision-making process.
Love it. Love it.
It is fantastic. There's 34 simulations right now in the library, and that will double here in the next 2 years.
Okay. So if somebody's like, whoa, this sounds awesome. If somebody's like an assistant soup or a soup and they oversee a bunch of administrators in their district, which we've interviewed a number of people who've oversee dozens of administrators. What would be the next step? Should they contact you? Is there a website they can go to check this school sims out, or what would you recommend?
Yeah, go to schoolsims.com or contact me. My email is david.dejong@usd.edu. And, if I was in charge of a district and I had an aspiring leadership group,
yep,
that meets once a month. So I'm a product of that at Pella. They kind of tapped me in my first year and said, hey, we'd like you to come to these meetings. They're Wednesday mornings, once a month. And if I was in charge of that right now, the only thing I would use is these simulations from SchoolSims. They take about an hour. They take you through they give you an experience that you would never get as a teacher leader.
Okay. I love that. I love the example you just gave. That was awesome. That's so, we have that conversation so many times in my meetings with our administrators about how what we do. I love that example.
Yeah. Yeah.
So let's talk. Okay, so that was topic number one, and then topic number two for me may have been even more like, okay, tell me more about this. The telepresence robots. Okay, this is my first time hearing this, Dave. So
Okay.
fill me in. What is this?
Okay. A telepresence robot is basically like an iPad on a Segway, like one wheel. And we have two of them in our program. They're in my office right now at USD. And what happens is with adult learners, we have a lot of situations where they cannot be physically present in our room, but they can be available. So what happens is they can be in Des Moines, Iowa, and they can't make the trip because of weather to Vermillion. So I would bring the robot to the room that I'm teaching, and they would log in on any Wi-Fi connection or through their phone, and they can drive this thing around with the arrows on a keypad, and then they can hear and they can see. So what I did is I started using these. I'm like, all right, this is legit, because it's giving access to people that don't necessarily have access. And I did a 2-year research project on this, and I just published this article. You talked about we have to publish. That's part of our job as a professor. So while we were using these, I was like, I might as well research them.
Mm-hmm.
And the user felt like physically and socially present in the room, even though they were in a different location.
Okay.
So like little things like when a speaker is talking on the other side of the room, they'll turn the robot to look at that speaker if it's one of their peers, and then they'll turn back to the professor, and then they'll do a group presentation where they'll drive around. Stairs are an issue.
Okay. Haven't quite figured that one out yet, huh?
Yeah, but I mean, and I think that part of my role is kind of being on the cutting edge. So that way, when I have a school superintendent or principal in my classroom, and then they have a student that is recovering from cancer, or they have a student that has an autoimmune issue.
Yeah.
Or one superintendent said, hey, we have a 6th grade girl that was in a car accident. I said, I can get you going with one of these in a week. They ordered one, they got it going, and she was joining class from the hospital within a week.
Wow. Oh, I mean, this is timely too. I had no idea where we're going with this, but now I'm looking at it. You're talking about it. Like, we've got students who, COVID related, don't want to be at school. And we want to honor that. We want to make sure we've got a plan for every kid. And, we've tried to do some virtual things in the classroom. It's been really difficult. Do you have any idea, Dave, what something like this might go for in terms of cost? I know technology, the costs are always, fluctuating, but do you have any idea? Because there might be some people who are listening that are Google searching like I am, and they're saying, hey, there could be something here I could use.
Yeah, well, a full disclaimer, I do not work for the company, and I don't have any connections to them other than they have a great product, right? It's called Double Robotics. I have 2 Double 3 robots, and they cost $4,000 a piece. The Double 2s used to cost about $2,500. The Double 3, now you can click on if you have a touch screen, you can click where you want to go, and it makes sure it doesn't bump into anything, and it will drive around an obstacle to where you want to go. And you can zoom across the room. So it's almost like you have superhuman capabilities. Like if you had eye issues, the double robot would actually benefit you because you could zoom across the room and see the screen.
I'm looking at a little demo right now on the Double Robotics webpage. Yeah. This is crazy. This is awesome. How have I not heard? This is why we have these conversations. I'm going to show this to our administrators and say, hey, take it or leave it. But we complain, we can't make virtual work. We can't do some things, whether it's with students or staff or whatever, but here's an option for us. That's awesome. So cool.
And I've helped school districts, like if a school board member can't attend a meeting, they've joined via robot. We've had students at USD that couldn't attend graduation, so they drove across the stage in a robot. I mean,
it'd be a little you have to get used to it, but that is the future, I bet, of some of these things.
Yeah, we named him Sheldon, the first one, because Sheldon Cooper on Big Bang drives one around.
Okay.
And the
Okay.
second one was Amy. So,
Okay. All right, man. Hey, let's switch gears up here a little bit. What
okay.
are 2 or 3 traits you believe that separate great leaders, great school leaders from just ordinary school leaders?
That's a good question. I teach about the trait theory in educational leadership at the doctorate level. And there's a author out there, his name's Dr. Peter Northouse, and he's like identified 5 traits. So determination, self-confidence, integrity, sociability, and intelligence. And every year I email him and I think humility should be added to that list. Because I think that people can tell if somebody is humble or not humble, and that dives into like authenticity. But yeah, I think that those 6 traits are universal and will help any leader in any role.
So if you could, I'm going to put you on the spot here. What if you could narrow it? I don't know if this is like I'm going against the rules or against the grain here with the research. If you could even pare those down to 2, like the top 2, can you do that? Is that possible or is that impossible?
No, that's possible. I mean, integrity is number 1, right?
Okay.
I think that any leader, like what you do when nobody's looking is your true character. That's like pokes at your integrity. And I think, leaders can get a long ways, but if you don't do the internal work that goes along with each job or each role that you're going into, or if you're influencing people, I think eventually you'll get crushed.
Hmm.
And the internal work, for me personally, has been the hardest, the most difficult stuff. So I think integrity is number 1. And, I think like determination and hard work is probably number 2. I think, in order to model the way as a leader, I think that doing your absolute best and being determined to get through things is a wonderful trait to have.
So okay, so we're going to even break it down even further. So the question I wrote down kind of along the same lines is, you see school leaders, aspiring school leaders or school leaders who've been doing it that are coming back to get their superintendent's license or their doctorate. Can you kind of tell right away when they've been in your class for a class or 2, kind of who has that it factor? And if so, can you kind of put into words what that it factor is?
Hmm. Yeah, what I can tell, when you go to graduate school, when you get as high as like it goes, your bachelor's, and then you get your master's, and then sometimes there's a specialist degree and then a doctorate degree. And you become a professional student when you get to the top. You're like, all right, I'm going to figure out the minimum amount of work I need to do to get an A and get out of here, right? That's a lot of people.
Mm-hmm.
But what separates school leaders is when they are there to learn, and when they are there to get out as much as you put in, right? So the it factor is people that are in it to learn and to grow as a leader. I mean, learning curve. I mean, basically, that's exactly one of the main themes in your book, right?
Sure. Yep.
So that gives people the it factor.
Yep. So so if somebody, you see a lot of school leaders who feel like they've got it figured out, like they act like they've got it figured out. I don't need to learn that stuff. I don't need to I don't need to read. I don't need to connect with others to learn. Is it possible to be a highly effective leader without having that itch for learning more?
No, I don't think so. I think the demands of leaders, and especially school leaders, the job is changing so rapidly at the moment that if you don't continually learn, you will stunt your organization, and the big losers will be the students of your district.
Okay.
So I think that learning is just absolutely, it's never been more important right now.
Okay. Okay. So the next question I got for you, Dr. D, is what is the biggest challenge facing new K through 12 school administrators?
You know, there are a lot of teachers out there that may want to be a principal, but they looked at what their principal is dealing with, and they're like, I don't want to do that. And there's a lot of principals out there that, maybe wanted to be a superintendent, and they're looking what their superintendent is doing, and they're like, I don't want to do that.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, COVID, you talk to people that have a lot of experience, it's been the biggest leadership challenge of their entire professional career.
Mm-hmm.
So kudos to people like you, Jared, for being able to like get out of bed and still do your best every day and keep learning in this environment. I mean, it is challenging. So the biggest challenge is, I think for people right now, it's actually getting their next degree. I predict that there will be a vacuum of school leadership in the Midwest, is what I know the best, in 3 years, because there's so many people not getting their next degree.
And I forgot to mention this. Dr. DeJong is not just saying these things. He actually holds a pretty important role in, and I did not write down the whole title here, but you were just named the president of a collection of secondary or post-secondary educational leadership professors. So maybe explain that real quick, because you're not just saying that. When you say there's going to be, I love that, a vacuum of school leadership in the Midwest, I mean, you've got some good context. Maybe explain what that role is.
Well, when I got into higher ed, I was looking around, I was like, what's the best international organization for professors of ed leadership? And there was an organization called the International Council of Professors of Educational Leadership, or ICPEL. So I started going to their conference. I loved it. I started presenting there every time I could get, every chance I got. I went there to learn, right? I made contacts, and then I got invited or nominated to apply to be on the executive board. And then I worked hard on the executive board, and they elected me the president. So I'm the president of like the leading organization for professors of ed leadership. They were desperate, but
but you have some conversations where clearly and that's been my theory, and now you're kind of backing it up. Like I keep telling people, I see a lot of people who are nearing retirement age in my context in Iowa in school leadership, and there's like not a whole lot of people coming up to fill that void. And that's kind of what you're seeing as well.
Yeah. Yep. We're seeing the same thing. If people have a chance to retire right now, they're looking strongly at it. So, the opportunity to lead has never been more important. And this is the time. This is absolutely the time to get your next degree.
So if somebody listened to you talk just a moment ago, let's back up one question. And like you said, hey, to be highly effective, you need to always be hungry to learn, to know what's best practice. If somebody's listening right now and they're like, okay, I'm motivated. I'm Dr. DeJong has motivated me to do some professional learning. What would you tell them, like for a short-term burst to get started, or for a short-term burst of a couple months here, a few months here? Well, where would you tell them to start? What should they do?
That's a good question. I think the best tool out there for professional learning is SchoolSims. I honestly think getting experiences in a safe environment, and I think that you would only need to do a couple simulations, and you would know, like, do I want to pursue my next degree or not? Because this is the kind of work that I would do. So there's a tidal wave of people using simulations in ed leadership right now.
This is awesome. I'm at the website and I scrolled down, about 2/3 the way down. And there you are, man. You got a testimonial. Well, it's your picture and that says testimonial. So I'll have to check that out. That's awesome. Very, very cool. Can they go and like demo? I mean, can they try one out if they're curious?
Yeah. Yep. You can try one out from the website, or you can email me. I'm sure I could send it to somebody at the company and get you a link, because all it is a hyperlink for you to go through a simulation.
Okay. Okay. Very cool. Very cool.
Yeah.
Hey, what advice, a lot of people I've spoken to, people who want to get their foot in school leadership, they're just having difficulty. Maybe they've went through an interview, a couple interviews, maybe 3 interviews, and every time it's thanks, but no thanks. And it hurts your confidence. You're like, maybe I'm not that good. Maybe I'm not cut out for it. What advice would you give to someone who's having difficulty getting their foot in the door of school administration?
Well, yeah. I mean, for teaching jobs, I think I applied for 70 some teaching jobs. And even though I got a job early, there were times I didn't get jobs, and there were jobs that I applied for to become a principal, didn't get it. There are jobs I applied for to be a professor, I didn't get it. So, I mean, I think it's just like early career leaders believe they're the only ones experiencing something. That is such a lie that we need to remind ourselves not to believe. So don't believe the lie that like a rejection is really bad, because any good organization, they have a list of what they need and experiences that they need in a leader. And if you're not the best fit for that, I think that's like a blessing, like no problem. Because school leaders, what I see is they apply for jobs based on the location more often than they try to figure out who they are as a leader, what skills and experiences do they have, and would they be a good fit for that school, or would they be a good fit for that district? I think that's much more important thing to ask yourself, not is it close to a city that I want to live in.
So how do they I love what you're saying, but how do they figure that out? How do they know, okay, I'm on a job search website and oh, there's a job open that's a little ways away. I probably have to move. How do I know that that district is a good fit for me? Do you have any recommendations?
Yeah, I mean, start with the website. So it's interesting to me that like, people will spend weekends going to classes to get their next degree and spend thousands and thousands of dollars. But when they apply for a job, they're like just changing a few words in their cover letter and applying for a job. Like, why aren't we spending oodles of time like researching the district website? We're only a few degrees of separation from every single school district in the US. It wouldn't take somebody long to track down an acquaintance of an acquaintance, and do your research. Ask them questions. You'll know.
Yeah.
That's my advice.
Let's talk about like when you work with aspiring school leaders about their materials, their cover letters you talked about, their resumes, their whatever it might be. What's something that you see that a lot of the students you're working with struggle at? What is one thing they need to improve at?
Well, I think any leader, you have to know who you are, right? So what message do you want to give with your written materials? And getting other people's advice and opinions to look that over for you is just absolutely vital. So, when I was a young leader, I was like, who really cares about my resume, or I care about relationships. I'm a relationship man. But the reality is the longer you lead, you realize that, your written work is just as important as other aspects, and people judge you based on that. So it's important to be a good writer in the application process. It's important to like practice interviewing, do mock interviews with somebody you trust, and do it in a way to learn, right? I could pick somebody that will tell me, oh, David, you did awesome. Or I could pick somebody that really I knew was going to teach me and I was going to improve, like in an interview, like leaning forward a little bit, making eye contact with every single person across the table, not just locking eyes with the one person that asks you questions. All those things matter. So learning about the interviewing process is probably, I guess, is the number one thing.
Okay. Okay. Hey, if you're joining us late, this is episode number 85 with Dr. David DeJong, who is an professor. I keep saying that wrong. Associate professor at the University of South Dakota. He's also doing some really cool things with iPal. Did I say that right? Or ICPAL?
ICPAL, yeah.
Okay. And he's also the leadership chair there, the educational leadership chair there at South Dakota. So, hey man, this has been so many good tips you've been giving us here. I've got a ton of notes up here. I know you can't see it very well, but just a lot of just a lot of things that you've been saying that have really struck a chord with me. All right, man. Hey, we're gonna work through our kind of our quick hitters here. I know you are I can tell you think a lot about like productivity and being, you're doing a lot of different things. You got family at home, right? You got 3 boys. Is that correct?
Yeah, 3 boys, Moose, Wolf, and Hawk. I love them.
So, okay, say that one more time for the audience. What are the names?
Moose, Wolf, and Hawk. And I'm always like this. I was writing my dissertation back in 2010. I was like, you know what? I'm going to get this done so I can be an assistant coach on all their like baseball, football, and basketball teams. Like I want to be the assistant. And that plan worked. Like I'm living my dream right now with the boys.
Oh, that's awesome. So what's their biggest sport? What's the one sport, or maybe they all got their own individual sports, but what's the big sport there in your neck of the woods?
It's whatever sport is in season. That's their favorite.
Because you're okay. So yeah, you've had, I'm thinking there's actually a lot of football talent kind of in that conference, right? Are you guys part of the MVC conference? Is that right?
Sure. Yep.
So Trey Land, North Dakota State's got, they're turning out all these, but there's been some really good players that have came from that area. So, hey man, okay. So if we're visiting your city, and I don't care if we go with Sioux Falls or if we go with Vermillion, or you can go with both if you want. What's one place we got to check out?
Oh, if you're in Sioux Falls, my wife and we love Looks Meat Market. So it's kind of an up and coming place. It's just fantastic for food and ambiance when people come and visit. So if you hear this and you'd like to visit us, I'll take you out to Lux.
Oh, okay. There's been a few of these people I've talked to on these shows who have said they will take me to dinner. I think I just need to do like a road trip and hit this. So I'm looking it up. Lux Meat Market.
Yeah. You're welcome. Supper on me, Jared.
Oh man. I'm right there right now. It looks okay. Yep. Yeah, all kinds of good stuff there, man. Holy cow. Wow. Okay. Looks good. What about in Vermillion? Any place in Vermillion you want to veer us towards?
Yeah, I mean, whenever I'm on campus, I'm just Chick-fil-A. You just go to the student center at University of South Dakota. It's just a fantastic building. It has lots of spaces that you can meet with people and just good restaurants. It's just a good place.
Awesome. Give me an idea. What's the enrollment there at South Dakota?
Well, that's a good question. It's over 10,000. It's about the same size as like University of Northern Iowa, where I went to undergrad.
Okay. Hey, Dr. DeJong, what is one sneaky good purchase you have made that has most improved your life?
My siblings and I bought some rental houses 11 years ago.
Okay, so tell me, because I've never done the rental house thing. Tell me how this works. What these days, like what tips can you give listeners?
Yeah, so we got into business together, and people advised us not to with your family, and we decided not to take any money out of the business. We just decided to keep rolling it into and just growing it. And yeah, we all put in an investment, and it's worth more than 5 times what we put in 11 years.
So you say rental, are you renting them out, and are you using like Airbnb or VRBO, or how does that work?
Yeah, so you can do that, but none of our houses are in like exotic locations that people would love to go to. So we hire a property manager that takes care of everything. So, when you can have an investment like that takes, only a few hours per year of your life, I mean, it's passive income, right?
Yeah.
So a sneaky good thing is to look for passive income.
Like it. Where are your locations at? If somebody's listening and they're like, "Hey, I want to go. I'll go wherever." Where's the locations at?
West Des Moines and Northwest Iowa and Sioux Falls.
Okay. Okay. Awesome, man. Hey, what is one book besides Learning Curve and besides the one that you have written? What is one book that has greatly influenced your life?
The Bible. I go through it every year.
Wow, you go through the whole thing every year?
Yeah.
So tell me how, and we usually don't get super into religion on the show, but like, how do you break that down? I mean, that's a huge book. Do you have a certain like a set number of pages you read a day, or a book a month, or how does that work?
Yeah, I'll read a different version every year, but I'll do it through an app. And usually now, what works best for me is to have it read to me.
Okay, like in the car, then.
Yeah, sometimes in the car, sometimes in quiet spots. Yeah, just a little bit each day is what works the best.
So you led me into the next question, which is, what is one phone app that has positively impacted your life? So you can go with that app if you want, or maybe there's another one you want to share about.
No, that's the app, because there's research that talks when if something's being read to you and you can read it with your eyes at the same time, that kind of deepens your learning of the content. So that's what I try to look for.
So what is the app then?
The YouVersion Bible of the app.
Okay. Okay. Now, outside of the Bible, do you do audio? I mean, do you do audiobooks? Do you do Kindle? Do you do all the above? What do you do for reading like professional books?
Well, right now I've been on 67 completed dissertations in 7 years. Now, that may not sound like a lot, but that is an incredible amount of professional learning, because it's research and I'm a part of like editing for content and research design. And I've learned so much from the people in our programs that, it's just fantastic how much you learn as a professor. So my professional reading is that, and also included with journal articles for writing my own research. But I also read to my boys out loud every night. And I have for every night for 11 years that I've had boys.
So a lot of reading involved there. Here's my question for you. A lot of people who are listening are K through 12 leaders, and they're interested what it might be like to make that jump. What is your kind of your breakdown of percentage of time teaching versus some working with dissertation, whatever, I guess being
Yes.
a mentor, and then research and writing. So kind of break that down for us.
Yeah. So most professors start 60% teaching, 30% research, 10% service. And that's how your contract is broken up. And that's how you should allot your time. So that helps you get through the promotion and tenure process in higher ed. And but when I was an assistant professor before I became the chair of the division, about 40% of my time was spent on dissertations. So that was reading dissertations, for 2 full days of every week. But now I teach just one class a semester, and I do a lot of like strategic planning for our team. I'm able to serve like 8 full-time professors and 8 adjunct professors that impact millions of kids in schools.
Exponential, right?
Yeah.
So hey, you told me before the show you actually have an opening. Is that, can we share that, or is that should I keep that on the DL right now?
No, an opening. Oh yes, yeah. So we're going to be advertising for a job on our team at the University of South Dakota. So I would work directly with you, and this position, we would probably need a little more superintendent experience, just because that's who's retiring. And it'd be 60% teaching. So it'd be like teaching 2 or 3 classes a semester, helping 10 people write a dissertation, writing 1 or 2 journal articles per year, and service. So helping districts, presenting at conferences, the normal stuff. It's a
Okay.
great job.
So, hey, I was saying this earlier. We've interviewed people from Nebraska. We've interviewed people from Minnesota, from Western Iowa. So there's been a lot of listeners in your neck of the woods. So, hey, if that sounds interesting and maybe you've got a little bit of superintendent experience, hey, reach out to Dr. DeJong there and maybe just at least take a look at the posting and see what happens. Hey, okay, you're go-to item at the convenience store. First of all, what are the gas stations out your direction? What are the convenience stores? Are they something new that I'm not used to, or are they the Casey's and Quick Star? What do you got there?
It's Casey's and Quick Star. So I have a Casey's credit card. So that's the only place I stop because I get a little extra bonus there.
So do you like the Casey's pizza?
Love the Casey's pizza.
People who have not had Casey's pizza, you got to check out Casey's pizza. What's your favorite specialty pizza at Casey's?
All the works, or all meat, just as many toppings as possible.
All right. So, hey, if you're not getting pizza, what is your go-to item?
The only time I stop at gas stations is for gas, because I'm literally that cheap. I'm a Northwest Iowa Dutch kid that knows the markup at convenience stores. So I stay away from that.
So will you bring a snack with you from home?
Oh, my wife still packs me snacks.
Okay. So what's your wife's go-to snack for you?
Granola bars.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
So let's dig deeper. What kind of granola bar, man? Are you just chewy? Are you just nature's health? I don't know what they're called. What kind of
I don't really have a go-to. I mean, it's just kind of variety would be my go-to.
Okay, now we're going to get serious for a minute. You mentioned earlier about applying for a job and not getting it. I mean, you're a very well-spoken guy. You're doing all kinds of cool things. Yeah. It's probably hard for somebody to believe. How did he not get a job? You know, how did he not walk in and get and win over the interview team and get a job? So maybe explain one time when you didn't get the job and your reaction.
Yeah. So one time I was applying for a superintendent job that was quite a bit larger than where I was. And I was in the final 2, and I had just a great experience all the way through, and everything just felt right. And I didn't get the offer. And, I look, back at what happened in that district, you still kind of follow those districts. And it was like such a blessing that I didn't get that job. I don't think we should let our egos get so close to like whether or not we get jobs. I really think when you go through the interviewing process, you need to keep focused on what am I learning about myself or about myself through the process. Too often we're like, am I going to get the job or not? And I think that when you have the right focus, I mean, it's not as crushing as if you don't get a job. Yeah. It's okay.
Yeah. I mean, we ask this question time after time, and everybody says the same thing. They look back and they're like, hey, I'm glad I didn't get it. That district, I've done the same thing. I look and see what that district who passed me over, what's going on. And
yeah,
it's probably a good reason why, it probably works out in the end for you. So I just love hearing those stories. Dave, you do a lot of things. You got the family, you got the kids playing sports all the time. You're reading, you're everything. What's your best tip for being productive?
So, I share a calendar with my wife. That would probably be my best if I had to nail down one thing. So that way she knows what I'm doing, and that helps me set boundaries. When my boys get home from school, I feel like I'm a little boy. I'm like, hey, let's get a snack and go play basketball. Yeah. So I'm on the driveway all sweaty with them after school. That's literally what we're going to do today. So being productive means like sharing a calendar and setting boundaries, right? So I could work all day and all night. I could easily do that and still feel like there's more work to be done. So organizing your calendar and sharing it with somebody else so that way you have a balanced life.
Okay.
There you go.
What is one big goal you are currently working on?
Well, I've had the privilege to teach about 175 school districts or universities how to use simulations. So I just teach them over Zoom. So I feel like infusing simulations throughout the world would probably be the big thing I'm working on.
Wow. Wow. Uh, yeah, that's really cool. I'm trying to think of a follow-up question on that. Where have you guys gone outside the United States at this point? Or is it just
Oh
pretty
yeah.
much in the United? Oh yeah.
Yeah,
Why
yeah.
don't you share that?
Well, I mean, one story is there was a school district in Saudi Arabia that wanted to use these, but they couldn't because it had female actresses. So they reshot the simulation with only male actors. And then, so we trained them how to use them. But then we had this simulation now. So I did like a 2-year research project where if I was presenting to like 30 superintendents, I would send 15 out of the room. They would do the simulation with the actresses, and then 15 would do with the male actors. And then I would bring them together. And at the end, and I would show a little bit of it, and I'd say, all right, this is the same script, the same exact situation. And would you treat a male differently than you treat a female when they share with you a concern about another teacher? And that gets really dicey. So
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
um, that's been great to get out of the country and get into another culture, because that opened that door for us.
So unique. Yeah, that's so unique to think about. Huh. Very cool, man. I gotta check this out. I'm just thinking, I love that scenario you gave earlier because I feel like I just had a conversation with a staff member earlier that had a very similar conversation about, hey, I don't want you to say anything, but how, it's just, some of those questions. So, hey,
You
Dave,
think how many simulations you could write, Jared? You know
yeah,
what I mean? You could write these full time with your job.
yeah. Oh gosh. Yeah. Yeah. Oh yeah. Yep. And I'm mentoring a couple aspiring superintendents right now, and they bring scenarios to me that they're just so much fun. Like they're like, well, what do you think? What should I do? And I'm like, oh my God. I'm always like, I don't know if I know the right answer here because this is these are very tricky situations. So that sounds really, really cool, man. Hey, we're about at an hour. This has been a ton of fun. So many cool things I'm learning. Is there anything we didn't talk about that you wanted the audience to know?
Yeah, one thing. I'm going to read my Amazon review for a book that I read. The title is I Wish I Would Have Read This Earlier, and it's about your learning curve book. I highly recommend Dr. Smith's book to any educational leader who is interested in personal growth and educational leadership. As a professor who is responsible for principal and superintendent prep programs, the wisdom in this book is perfect for aspiring leaders who want to begin well and for current leaders who want to grow as a leader. I wish I would have read this during my early days as an educational leader. I wrote that because I meant it. Your book was that good that it deserved a review like that. So good job. That's what I want people to know. You didn't even know I was going to say that.
No, and I'll Venmo you the $500 I promised you when we're done here. So thanks. No, guys, hey, if you're listening, he did that on his own. I did not tell him to do that. That was very, very kind of you. So hey, I appreciate that because I do trust your word. You've had a chance to read hundreds of different dissertations. You've worked with school leaders. I did have you peer review it. You gave me some great feedback, some things to consider, some things that I took out, some things that I changed based on your feedback. So I appreciate that very much. So awesome, man. Well, hey, I always ask, where should people connect with you? You've already mentioned the web, your email address. Where else should they connect with you at?
Yeah. So my Twitter is at David DeJong. My LinkedIn, you can search for me. It's David DeJong. So I'm pretty easy to get a hold of. I'd be happy to talk to anybody.
So on Twitter, you always kind of go like, is it #GoYotes?
Yeah, good job.
So what's Yotes? What's that short for?
That's for coyotes, for the University of South Dakota Coyotes. So
okay. And what South Dakota do they have? We talked about sports. Maybe I'm sounding too one-dimensional here, but are they known for any one sport in particular?
I would say, all sports are pretty big. Sports are a big deal. I mean, but hunting is a big deal in South Dakota too. So I spend a lot of time outdoors in this great state.
Okay. And is it true you can't give away where your secret hunting spot's at? Is that kind of is that a thing?
That's a thing.
Because I never have hunted, but people say like I've kind of asked that. I've learned not to ask because they can't really tell you where their hunting spot's at. But
Jared, we will go to Looks Meat Market and I'll teach you how to hunt.
all right, man. Hey, this is sounding, my mentor is Dr. Gosman at Sioux City. And so you're just a little ways up. You're just a little ways up the road there. So I might have to make this happen. So, hey, Doctor, I'll let you get going, man. You probably got kids to play basketball with. You probably got to eat those granola bars. You probably got you got to get going there. So I appreciate it. This has been a ton of fun. Check him out. If you're interested in an opening, reach out to him. And yeah, man, you're doing some awesome things. It's been great to connect.
Thanks, Jared.
All right, man. Hey, have a good night. We'll be in touch. Okay.
Take care.